This is the Dallas Morning News.
Hello and welcome back. It's a new episode of SportsDay Rangers. I'm John Blake.
And I am still Evan Grant.
We've got a big guest today. It's the new manager of the Texas Rangers, Skip Schumaker.
And it'll be a very different look in the Rangers dugout in 2026. On top of Skip, the Rangers will have a new pitching coach. They'll have a new hitting coach. They'll have a new catching and third base coaches as well. So the manager is going to get kind of his own staff.
So to start this week on the podcast, we'll get Evan's take on the early part of the offseason, what the Rangers might do. And on the archives in Arlington, the theme is going to be managers and some little different managerial searches the Rangers have had over the years.
I'm sure you've bungled some in your time. Anyway, we know you've missed us on SportsDay Rangers. John and I, it's been about a month since the season ended. We are continuing this on a monthly basis through the offseason until we get to spring training. John, what's been keeping you busy lately?
Well, I've watched a lot of postseason baseball.
What'd you think of that?
I thought the World Series, I was rooting. I mean, I'll be honest, everybody here, people might not like it. I like to see teams that have never won the World Series. So I was kind of hoping to see the Mariners or the Brewers in the World Series. Unless you work for a team that has not been on that list, you really want to get off that list. And in the Mariners' case, never having been to the Fall Classic is tough. The final was tough. I mean, the Blue Jays with the Rangers' history with them was tough. The Dodgers are a really good team. And to me, it goes at starting pitching. You look at Game 7, and 7 starting pitchers are in that game. It just matters so much.
Yeah, it really does. I thought there would be some great storylines based on what the Final Four were for potential World Series, because you could have had the Seattle Pilots Memorial World Series with the Milwaukee Brewers, who started off as the Pilots, against the Mariners. You could have had the expansion. Well, you had the expansion ALCS with the Mariners against the Blue Jays. And look, the Toronto hasn't won in 30 years, and I'm completely happy with that had it happen, because I know what it means to a fan base, having witnessed it here and having witnessed what it's like when a team goes a long, long time without being able to experience that for its fan base. I know how important it is. But when all was said and done, the Dodgers are, I know the narrative now is that the Dodgers are ruining baseball because somehow they go for it every year. I don't buy that one bit. And the Dodgers are a likable team. Clayton Kershaw is a distinguished human being and a Dallas native. And so he was a guy that obviously you root for. I liked the way those guys play the game. And so I don't have a problem with a dynasty in baseball, and one that you actually have to topple. And the performances we saw from Shohei Ohtani and Yamamoto and Sasaki, all of that gave that international flair, along with Vlad Guerrero Jr. So it was a great World Series. There were plenty of great storylines and plenty of great performances to match up. But yeah, pitching and defense. And here's the great thing, right? You saw what great starting pitching and what great defense do. What were the Rangers' 2 strengths this year? Great starting pitching and great defense. And had they been locked into those close scoring games, who knows what happens against those teams? But we know the offense just wasn't good enough.
Bottom of the 9th, bases loaded. Here comes Jimmy Dale from Baker Brothers Plumbing, AC, and Electrical.
Thanks, Chuck. When your home pitches curveballs, Baker Brothers knocks it out of the park.
Home run, Baker Brothers. Incredible.
As the official home service partner of your Texas Rangers, we're offering $300 off a tank or tankless water heater.
Another winning call. Visit callbakernow.com or dial 214-342-1171 today.
Great service.
Well, let's get into that a little bit. You've had a busy offseason so far. The Rangers did hire Skip Schumaker very quickly. That was kind of a given once Bruce Bochy was not coming back. Coaching staff is in the process of being changed. A couple of really long-time holdovers are moving on. And then general managers meetings are next week. So let's put the coaches aside for a minute and just talk about what do you see as the primary objectives. I mean, obviously hitting, but and you did a big story on this a couple of days ago, trying to construct a roster based on, the guys that are going to come back. You got to get more out of them as well.
It starts with that. And I don't think you're going to be able to make a ton of moves because everything I've been told, everything I've asked about indicates that the Rangers' payroll is going to be less in 2026 than it was in 2025. And it's going to come out at about $241 million for the 2025 season when Major League Baseball puts the final accounting on that middle of November. How much less is what's going to dictate how this offseason goes. If it's 10% less, I think the Rangers can basically keep this nucleus together and try and run it back as is. If it's less than that, based on what the TV revenues were last year, based on the potential for a looming lockout, based on how you and I both know Ray Davis is very conservative with how he approaches things financially. If all of that factors in and the Rangers have to go down to $200 million or $195 even, it gets a lot dicier and you have to get very creative. So I think there are different ways the Rangers can go. I think the biggest question they have to first decide is like exactly what is the payroll going to be? What's the range going to be? And then I think what they have to do is the first step is create maximum flexibility to get the most with what dollars they'll have left, which may mean trading a contract here or there.
Right, and that's what I was going to refer to. They've got a lot of money tied up in 4, if you count Jock Peterson, 5 players. And in the roster that you had in the paper, Marcus Semien was not on it. I know that was conjecture and speculation, but do you think that is a real possibility that they're going to have to really get creative and maybe look to move one of those well, I guess the big 4, right? Seager, Semien, DeGrom, Eovaldi.
Yeah.
Do you think that is something that is going to get a lot of discussion this early in the winter?
I think if you want to remake this team and fill the holes that you will need to fill, which I believe to be right field, catcher, and potentially second base, as well as a spot in the rotation, at least one spot in the rotation, and remake the bullpen, you've got to create more flexibility. And the only way to do it right now is to trade a big contract. I think that you look at the history of second basemen and when they get to age 35 and beyond, that they decline. And we've seen Marcus's performance offensively decline each of the last 2 years, which should be a red flag that, hey, it may be time to try and move on from that. I think to do that, you'd have to eat a bunch of that salary. But even if you eat 60 of the $72 million that he's owed, you're saving, about $5 million a year. If you can get something back like a reliever that helps you, if you're talking kind of like a Nate Lowe for Robert Garcia trade, that helps you. Maybe you can get somebody to take on more of the financial impact, but you get back less. So I think
or in that case, you might have to give more.
Right.
You might have to give another piece with Marcus
to get a real value.
Right.
After that, I think it becomes really dicey because you still got 2 guys making over $30 million a year in Corey Seager and Jacob deGrom. And the fact is, in this market and with trades, if you can move one of those salaries, and those 2 guys, I think you could still trade them and either save their entire contract or get back somebody who's making less who would fill a real void. I proposed a deGrom for Spencer Strider kind of deal because I think Jacob would accept a deal to Atlanta. He's got a complete no-trade clause. I think that he pitched at the top of his game this year. I think Spencer Strider is coming off of a poor year, 1 year after Tommy John surgery, but the second year back is usually when we see guys really step up. Rangers have a long history of betting on that, and Spencer Strider would come with less financial encumbrance. So I could see that as a way the Rangers potentially try to maximize Jacob's value right now after, what should be a top 10 finish in the Cy Young voting. I don't know if he'll finish in the top 5. You factor in his age as well, and you factor in that you need some money. I think that all of that makes him a potential guy to move. I think there would be an attractive market for Corey Seager if the Rangers go down that road. I think Atlanta would have interest. I think the New York Yankees would have interest, and I think Boston would all have interest. And John, right? You get the Red Sox and the Yankees involved in anything, you're going to maximize the value. So They're not attractive trades to look at from the perspective of what these guys have done for the Rangers or their talents. But I think if you're going to have to get creative in order to contend next year, those are the kinds of things you have to look at.
And it's important. You got to look at your fan base too, and the messaging that you send them. And so again, we'll see what happens here. So, lot of talk going on. Evan will find out more next week when the general managers meeting in Las Vegas this year, moving to Vegas. But our guest on the podcast this week is the new Rangers manager Skip Schumaker, who had served as a senior advisor to Chris Young this last season after 2 years managing the Miami Marlins. That followed an 11-year playing career, spent mostly with the St. Louis Cardinals. He was on that 2011 Cardinals team, and we'll talk to Skip coming up next.
Before we start with Skip, I got the chance last week to go out and visit with him in L.A., Orange County. We're going to have a story that hopefully drops right around the same time that the podcast is up on online. And it was a really fascinating day spent with him talking baseball, talking about things that give him edge because he feels like he needs edge, and we'll ask him about that. And just watching him, he spoke to a junior college team while we were there. It was really, really impressive to watch him do that. And also we'll ask him a little bit about his involvement with children's hospitals, because he's been very active there, and I believe he intends to do that as well when he gets here to Arlington for the season.
Well, that's coming up next here on Sports Day Rangers. Our guest today on Sports Day Rangers is the new manager, 21st full-time manager in Texas Rangers history, Skip Schumaker. Skip, thanks for joining us this afternoon. I know you've had a lot of Evan here lately, so you're going to get a little more now. But the first question for me is, you've been on the job now about a month. What has it been like since since the official word came down?
It's been great. A lot of interviews, not only in-house interviews, but external, coaching candidate interviews, a lot of conversations with our players. I haven't finished that yet, still ongoing. There's a lot of players on that 40-man roster. So trying to make sure that I not only, either give them a call or meet with them at their house or, over a coffee, whatever it is. So trying to be intentional about that. But just really trying to get the coaching staff dialed in, and not do anything fast, but really take our time with that. But everything else has been good, and but it's been a lot of conversations and Zoom calls.
So how has that varied from like your first month the first time around? Has this been smoother for you, or has it felt even more hair on fire right now?
I think the first time around was a little different because, Miami, we didn't win a ton of games before I got there, right? I mean, there was there's a lot of things that, we needed to do to make sure we cleaned some stuff up. I only kept, a couple guys, and there was a lot of new hires. There was a lot of new position titles that we could create to make sure we got some guys here. Where in Texas, there's been a very, very healthy foundation set already. A lot of good coaches, a lot of good people around here, a lot of really good coaches down in the minor leagues that we got to make sure that we have conversations with to make sure we're getting this thing right. Where in Miami, there was so much turnover that it just wasn't just a much different scenario.
You've been asked this a lot, but I think we just want to kind of get your take on it here on the podcast. Spending the last year as a special advisor for the Rangers, and being able to have that experience before getting this job, being able to touch like every aspect of this organization is very unique for a new manager coming into a role.
It is, and very lucky to have it, honestly. I got to meet a lot of people. There's managers right now that are just got the job that are meeting a lot of these guys for the first time. I got to do it for 7-8 months, which I'm very, very grateful for during a season when you can really see the personalities of coaches, players, R&D, front office, that's when it really comes out, when, there's some good moments in the season, there's some bad moments in the season, and you can really start seeing real personalities, and not just the interview personalities where you're getting the best version of everybody. So I think very fortunate to see, what the leadership looks like here, and what the minor league system looks like here. I got to spend a lot of time with Bonifay, and just certain things that who's the farm director, just certain things that I would not be able to do in a 1 week interview process with other organizations. So it was very unique, but very grateful for it. So you can kind of hit the ground running.
Before we just leave the coaching staff and get into a couple of things from our visit last week, I think, there's been a lot of talk. Obviously, there's been some turnover, and you guys haven't fully announced the coaching staff yet. But Mike Maddox has been here a long time, was very popular with a lot of fans. He's decided to take a job with the Angels. How do you feel about the way the pitching staff will go forward based off of, what this pitching staff accomplished in 2025?
Yeah, a lot of really good pitchers, obviously, in that rotation. When healthy, one of the most dominant, pitching staffs in the league. There were some guys that were injured last year, unfortunately, at the very beginning, that ended up coming back healthy, like Tyler, for instance. And then you had some really incredible seasons, like Evo, DeGrom's comeback year. Jack Leiter really showed what he's capable of doing. I think he's just scratching the surface. So there's a lot of credit due to the pitching department, honestly, of having these guys mature underneath their leadership. And so I'm really excited where it's at. The bullpen obviously was I think there's going to be, there's a lot of turnover last year, and there might be some this year. I mean, it's just reality. A lot of free agents, and our front office did an amazing job of piecing it together, and getting some guys that really fit, and they were very creative in putting that together, and anticipating probably doing a similar type of offseason of creating a really good bullpen with different arm angles and matchups that are really beneficial to our staff. But as far as the pitching department, yeah, Mike was really good. Obviously, I had him. I was with him in St. Louis. He had really good, successful run here as well. And part of this game is it's tough to keep everybody and hold on to everybody. Coaching or player-wise, it's just the reality of the business. But we feel really good where we're at right now in the pitching department. Not a ton is going to change. We're just going to add to what is already a really good situation.
Hey, as I this podcast is kind of dropping in conjunction with the profile that I came out to California to visit you on. And I think a big part of that story, I'd like you to talk a little bit about a couple of these things, because I think what comes out in print says it, but I think when people actually hear it from you, it's going to, in your voice and on camera, it's going to matter even more. But, the biggest thing that I've noticed about you being around you the last year is this edge, right? That you work with. I think when we talked, sometimes you said, I've got a sick mind. I said, no, it's not sick, but we talked about things that drive you. And so I'm just going to ask you to tell the story of the legend that is Clemente Bonilla, and how that drove you in terms of making you who you were.
Yeah, I think when I say sick mind, I just don't believe in staying the same every day. And I just believe you're getting better or worse. And that's how I truly go about every single day. And I expect my coaching staff to believe the same thing, and drive that into that clubhouse, and absolutely have the belief and the buy-in of these players. Either you're getting better or worse. There's no just like you're staying the same. And I really believe in player development at the major league level as well. So that's when I say sick mind, like I just feel everybody can get better, including myself. And so that's what drives me. Clemente Bonilla I was in high school. My junior year, I led Orange County, which is a very good baseball county in southern Orange County, California. Michael Young lives out here. there's a lot of good major leaguers that have come out of here. My junior year, I led Orange County in hitting, and there's this thing called area codes. And it's supposed to be the best players in your area make the area code team, and you face different area codes around the United States, even from Texas, and you go to Blair Field, which is in Long Beach State, and different area codes from different states come into this showcase and play each other in front of tons of scouts. It's an amazing event. So I thought for sure I would at least make it to the next round. Well, there's 4 rounds. I got cut the first round in 1997, my junior year, and Clemente Bonilla made it over me. Clemente Bonilla ended up being my motivation for the next 8 to 10 years because I was going to prove to everybody that they made a mistake. And so every single rep in the weight room, every single hit off the tee, every single long toss throw, every single sprint, I had Clemente Bonilla on my mind. I had it written in my hat. I had it written on the tape on my wrist. I had it in my bedroom. Clemente Bonilla was enemy number 1. Clemente Bonilla is a great guy, by the way. So fast forward in 2020, I've never met Clemente Bonilla, by the way. So 2020, COVID happens. And in California, we were having a tough time. Our kids it was a mess with these Zoom calls and everything. So we ended up going from public to private school because the schools were open privately, but not publicly. So we go to this school called CVCS, and our kids are taking the tour with our family. And we go, my son at the time was in 7th grade, and we go meet the baseball coach, and the baseball coach name is Clemente Bonilla. And I was like, oh my gosh. And so he introduces himself. He goes, hey, Skip, my name is Clemente Bonilla. You probably have no idea who I am, but, really nice to meet you. And I said, you have no idea what you've meant to me. And so I sat him down, and we actually did a podcast for his team talking about this and motivation and everything. And we're good friends to this day, but he had no clue for the last 20 plus years that he has been on my mind.
That's amazing.
It's a great story, and I mean it really encapsulates like how you were driven to, and I think later on, and this will be part of the story as well, but later on when you met Michael Young, he kind of put into your mind, you either prove people right or prove people wrong. It kind of distilled it a little bit further, and we'll explore that in the story. But the John, did you have something you wanted to add here?
Go ahead. You're on a roll here.
I'm on a roll. The other thing for me, Skip, is like this sense of principle that you operate with. And I thought the way that you retired from the game as an active player said a lot about that. And so let me set it up. Basically you're in spring training with the Padres. I think as a non-roster guy in 2016.
Correct.
You're in an intra-squad game, middle of camp sometime, right?
Pretty early, about 2 weeks into camp. Yeah, about 5 games in.
And you're in this intra-squad game, and the manager is for the team is Rod Barajas, who was on the coaching staff. Asked you if you want to take one more at bat, and I'll let you take it from there.
Yeah, I've grounded out like the first 8 of my 10 at bats to the right side again. And I was having to cheat to fastballs the last year or so. And I worked all offseason to try to get back to hitting a fastball and not rolling over and being late. Well, didn't work. And baseball usually tells you when it's over. And it was telling me right away in spring training, like, these guys around me are a lot better than I am. And I think it might be time. What's funny is I was competing against Travis Jankowski, who you guys know well, for that 4th outfield spot. I could also play second, so I kind of had an in, but and they were also looking for veteran leadership. So I told Rod, I said, "Listen, Rod, it was a split squad game, and I told Rod if I ground out one more time against that guy who was throwing about 89 miles an hour right down the middle, I said I'm done." And he goes, "Okay, yeah, no problem." He thought I was done for the game, but I was done playing baseball. And so I grounded out, shocker, and went back in, grabbed my stuff, and called Andy Green that night and said, "Hey, listen, I don't feel comfortable going forward and wasting people's time. I know that I'm done. And he said, you have a job, like it's yours pretty much. I mean, we need a veteran leader on this bench. And I didn't feel comfortable just sitting on the bench, not being productive. I wanted to be a productive major league player to help a rookie manager win games. And I did not feel like I was that. And I didn't want to go through this hitting 100 through June, and then I get released, and here we go again. And I felt Travis was better than me at the time, and so I just didn't feel comfortable, in that role. And so Andy said, okay, met again for coffee the next morning to make sure before spring training started. I said yes. He wanted me to address the team. I don't feel like a guy in my position should announce retirement because I wasn't a very good player. I can't stand when I see on trade rumors like these very average players who are not going to get a job, right? Like there's no way any team is calling and they're going to announce retirement. I'm just like, come on.
Some
guys.
of them played for like 2 years when they announced
exactly,
their retirement.
And they're announcing retirement,
crazy.
but it just blows my mind. So I was like, I'm not announcing my retirement. I'll say something to the club. And then, I'll move on. And then he actually offered me a senior advisor role right away. He and AJ Preller, who you guys also know well. And that kind of started my path in where I am today.
The amazing thing is I talked to Andy Green about this, and Andy said the same exact thing that Skip said last week, which was, I can't in good conscience take a job from a player I know is better than me. That was the same exact quote that Andy said you told him over coffee at Starbucks. And I do think it speaks to just how principled you are, and we'll explore a little bit more of that. And the last thing I wanted to touch on with you, and we didn't get a chance to really go into this much, but you have a really strong connection with the Jenny Reese Foundation, and I believe, are you wearing the NIGU hat right now?
I am, of all things, so yeah.
NIGU, Never Ever Give Up, is the actual name of the charity. But you go on almost monthly hospital visits during the season, is that right? To pediatric cancer wards?
I do, and we do it in the off season as well, as much as we can.
And so
unfortunately,
why? What's the background on that? Why do you do it, and what does it mean in terms of making you a better baseball manager in person?
Sure. Yeah. In 2009, I moved from the outfield to the infield. Tony La Russa called me in the offseason, said, hey, we're moving on from Adam Kennedy. We think you can play infield. And I said, oh, my gosh. Like, I haven't taken a ground ball since I was literally my freshman year in college, maybe even in high school. And so at the major league level, with the St. Louis Cardinals, I mean, the St. Louis Cardinals in 2009, we're trying to win a World Series. The Chris Carpenter and Adam Wainwright are number 1 and 2 guys, and they expect a ground ball double play to be turned 10 out of 10 times. And I am tackling ground balls, as soon as Tony La Russa calls, I'm trying to take ground balls the next day, and it is not going well. So anxiety kind of crept in a little bit into my life, into my playing career. I never had it before. And so going through that spring training and beginning of the year, you never want to be embarrassed on a baseball field. You never want to fear failure and have these kind of doubts creep into your head. I mean, you heard it the other day with Mookie Betts, his post-game interview after turning that double play was, hey, what were you thinking? He goes, it was the most nervous I've ever been, but I wanted to remind myself to be nasty, right? And he's just building himself up with this confidence that if it's hit to me, the game's over. That's what he was thinking. I didn't have that until Matt Holliday and Adam Wainwright started taking me to these hospital visits. They're like, hey, listen, you're thinking you're consumed with this game. You need to have an outlet. Let's go, to a couple hospital visits. Let's take your mind off some things, put some things in perspective. We'll play with some kids and make their day just incredible. And you get to think about exactly how important an error is, because fear is something that hasn't happened yet, right? That you're fearing something that is fear generally something in the game for me that hasn't happened yet. You're just fearing the worst, which I don't know if it's going to happen or not, but that was in my brain. So I went through these hospital visits with Matt and Adam, and it just put things in perspective. Like, these kids are going through this, and I'm worried about a ground ball. Like, what are we talking about? Like, and that just freed me up. And so it was an incredible moment in my life because of Adam and Matt. So fast forward, I get traded in the offseason of 2012 to the Los Angeles Dodgers, going into the 2013 season. Nick Punto also was traded, who is my neighbor in Ladera Ranch. And in Santa Margarita, where my son actually plays baseball and my daughter plays soccer, a little girl named Jessie Reese was diagnosed with a brain tumor, inoperable, and ended up passing away. And so the connection was, I was going through these hospital visits in St. Louis, and my wife and I wanted to be a part of something bigger than ourselves in our community. We just didn't know what it was. And then here's Jessie Reese, the story. And so we dove in head first, and it was, incredible for us. And now it's something that we are passionate about, bringing players with us, 2 players, and handing these joy jars out to them, and making they're putting stuff in perspective for these players. Because, what you realize, you think you're going to these hospital visits, and you are, and you're giving these kids something else to think about that day. They get to see major league players and do different things, with the guys for a couple hours, which is incredible for them. But we get more out of it when we leave because of, how grateful we are, with, our kids and where they're at in their lives, and what they're going through is nowhere near what we're going through. So anyway, that's kind of where this all came from.
And you think you'll continue that in Texas? Is that your goal, Skip, that you will kind of?
100%. Eric Reese is going to be out there. He's out there in Dallas quite often. He'll be out there in the next couple of weeks. Unfortunately, there's kids all over the place that have cancer. And so that we'll never stop doing it until, there's no more kids, with cancer.
That's great. I'm glad you brought the Cardinals up. We're looking at the 2011 World Series, and we all know about Game 6. Do you think you guys would have won if Game 6 had been played on the day it was supposed to be played, and Carpenter couldn't pitch Game 7?
What do you mean, the rain delay? There was no rain?
Correct.
You talking about that? The rain out? Yeah. Michael Young doesn't bring that up daily at all to me.
Yeah.
Of course I'm going to tell you, yes, we would have won. Of course.
What about Game 6? What about those last 2 innings of Game 6? Last 3 innings, I guess. We don't like to talk about the 11th, but
no, I hear you. It was such an evenly matched World Series. I mean, it was like, the bench guys were really good. The bullpen guys were really good. The starting pitching was good. You had superstars on each side. I mean, it was so much fun to be part of. But a lot of us thought it was over, quite honestly. You had the best closer in the game against us with, so the bottom of our lineup at the time coming up, actually, no, it was the middle. Now I think about it, towards the top of the order. But it was something that, we were so unsure of, that Tony La Russa said, hey, make sure, a couple of us, it was me, Carp, can't remember, maybe Gerald Laird, we're there. He's like, hey, make sure that you stick around and thank the fans. Like, don't just go inside the clubhouse and that's it. Like, this was an incredible run. Just make sure you're out here and thank the fans. I mean, that's where we were at the beginning of the inning. And so we never heard Tony say that before. I promise you, he's going to tell you that didn't happen. But it did. And so, we said, okay, and then all of a sudden it was, you guys know the story. And pretty incredible.
Yeah, I think that'll be an off-season project for you too at some point in time. How you reconcile 2011 with being the Texas Rangers manager, especially since you've got that tattoo on your arm with the clock at the exact time of the final out of Game 7. So, listen, Skip, this has been great. Thanks for visiting with us. Didn't mean to take up so much of your time, but I think it's great to get some insight into who you are as a manager and for fans to actually hear it from you firsthand.
You're going to get used to it, Skip, dealing with him. You're going to get used to it.
Nobody
daily
No, it was a great time. Yeah, Evan was out here quiet for a full day and a half, and it was listen. I know it's you guys have a job to do. I enjoy it, and this has been fun. So thank you guys for having me on.
A big thanks to Skip Schumaker for joining us this week. He's got a lot going on right now, and we really appreciate it.
So putting up with me twice in 1 week.
So to wrap up this episode of Sports Day Rangers, it's the always popular Archives in Arlington, and
Who's it popular with?
Well, I get many requests for items from the Archives. Yes,
you are in charge of artifacts, so good.
Well, this week, though, I thought we would look a little bit at since keeping with the theme, managerial hirings. And the Schumaker hiring, and the last two Ranger hirings under Chris Young have gone very quickly, right? Bruce Bochy was one of two candidates, probably. Schumaker was already internally. But you look back, Evan, and the previous two searches is what I looked at with Jeff Bannister and Chris Woodward. And those, John Daniels hired three managers, none of whom had major league experience as a manager, which I think is something I think it's important. You look at the managerial hirings that have happened this winter, they're all over the map.
Well, JD was willing to step outside his comfort zone on a lot of things, and he deserves credit for that and for taking risks.
So, but they were prolonged searches, right? I mean, in both cases with Jeff Bannister and in Chris Woodward, because I was part of those searches. Maybe that was part of the problem. We interviewed multiple candidates, close to double figures, and those guys, JD was nice enough to have them come in and sit with me for the most part, and we'd go over media things, and I got to meet a lot of the managers that ended up managing later on, Derek Shelton and David Bell and
what
Brendan
would you tell
Hyde
these managers about dealing with me, these prospective managers?
Well, we would talk about that, and I would say, the morning news is very important to the Rangers, but you gotta get used to the personality of the main beat writer, because you just gotta laugh it off a little bit, and there are gonna be days when he may not be Mr. Friendly, could be Mr. Grumpy on some days. We used to have to try to lighten him up.
Are you saying I'm moody, John?
Lighten him up in those days. But anyway, getting back to the subject at hand here, two prolonged manager searches. And to me, you look at the Ranger managers, Skip is the 11th to be hired in the offseason out of 21. And back in the day, the Rangers were very big on pulling the trigger in the middle of the season and then hiring somebody that they might keep on for a year and then pull the trigger again. But as
it's not ideal, I got to tell you, not ideal.
The process has changed. 8 of the last 9, beginning with Kevin Kennedy, were hired in the off season. But again, and then the last 6 have been in that fashion. But again, mentioning that middle of the season change, the previous 3 before Bochy did not last through the end of the season. A couple of trivia questions for you, Evan, and then we'll move on here. Who do you think the latest manager hired was? Don Zimmer on November the 12th in 1980. And the Johnny Oates search was a little bit interesting too. That was a big change for the ball club. If you remember, after 93, Tom Grieve was let go. Kevin Kennedy was let go. Kevin Kennedy basically already had the Boston job in his hip pocket. I remember when I went down to talk to him after he'd been fired, he was cleaning out his office, and you couldn't even tell he'd been fired here because he already had the job in Boston. But Doug Melvin came in, and he really had 2 candidates for this job, Phil Reagan and Johnny Oates.
Both connections to his days in Baltimore.
Right, and he had a couple other guys like Buddy Bell and Dave Duncan who he was going to talk to, and the way it worked is Baltimore quickly hired Reagan to manage the team, and then Doug, I don't think, wanted to lose Johnny, so he ended up not interviewing Buddy and Dave Duncan, caused some hard feelings right out of the chute, but I do think, obviously, he made the right hire. And Johnny Oates, who led the Rangers to the first 3 World Series, first 3 American League West Division titles. And then Schumaker, the other thing is he is the and again, getting back to this previous experience, the 8th manager to do it. Can you name the 8?
That had previous managerial
previous MLB managerial experience.
All right, let's go backwards in order. Bochy.
Correct.
Buck.
Yep.
Our favorite guy.
Yep.
Johnny.
Yep. Now it gets a little tougher for you.
Now it gets a little bit tougher. Don Zimmer.
Very good.
Billy Martin.
Right. These last two, I think it's going to be hard for you to get. So,
Pat Corrales didn't have previous experience. Bobby Valentine didn't have previous experience. Whitey Herzog didn't have previous experience. Did Billy Hunter have previous experience? All right, so I'm out.
So the two are Darrell Johnson, who became manager in the middle of the '82 season.
Lasted a month.
He had actually managed the Red Sox in 1975 when they went to the World Series, and Frank Lucchese. Who had managed the Phillies before he came to Texas.
Didn't he manage the Phillies to like that 50-win season?
He did not have a lot of success in Philadelphia. Yeah. And he was also the interim manager of the Cubs after he left the Rangers, replaced by Don Zimmer.
Should have gotten Frank Lucchese.
And
should have gotten
that's him. The way the managerial world kind of works. But like I said, having that MLB experience, I think I think it'll be a help here. You know?
Oh, I think everything portends for Skip to have success here, or the maximum amount of success, because he has previous managerial experience. He dealt with a rebuilding or restructuring organization, and if the Rangers go down that path, he's got previous experience there. But I think, and I made note of this, and I wrote a column about this, I think it was so important that he spent a year around this organization auditing the organization. I don't think
that's unusual.
A Rangers manager has had that opportunity in the past. He was able to pick Bruce Bochy's brain, and Boch had plenty of security around Skip. He was able to go to the minor leagues and see up close the prospects and get to know them a little bit and get to know the player development staff. He was able to sit in on meetings with Chris Young and get to know that personality. He interacted with all the special assistants on a regular basis, and he and Michael Young go back a long, long way and are very close friends. So I thought that it was a really good year to prep him, and I thought ultimately that's why he thought that this was the place to go. He had invested this much time. I don't think he wanted to pick up and change. And I think the Rangers also wanted to say, this is our guy. We can't let him get to the point where he's interviewing with other clubs, because if we get there, other clubs that are closer to his home in California, like potentially the Padres, are going to make him really attractive offers. So they acted to get that done and did it very quickly.
So we'll see how it works out, and we thank you for joining us here on Sports Day Rangers. And again, thanks to Skip Schumaker.
We'll keep you up to date with everything on the Rangers news this offseason. You know, you can always find me at dallasnews.com and on the Twitter X at Evan_P_Grant. Hopefully more from me on the Instagram, where it's the same handle. And we'll be back with an episode right around the start of December. So have a great week, everybody.
And we will talk to you soon.